Hi, I'm Karen. We're here at Monteville Sewing Center, and today we're talking about the Janome 6700. In this video, we're going to talk about the settings that you can use to make your machine really efficient and useful for you. Okay, so to start with, we have these keys right here. Now, you'll see in the screen that you can push a number, and that's with one button push, it'll get you directly to the stitch that you want. Now, what if we wanted to change these? You actually have the option to change from 4 down to 0 to different stitches if you want. You do that by pushing this M right here, and that gets you into this. Now, you can't change from 1, 2, or 3. They're just fixed. That's what they're going to be. But let's say, for instance, I don't do a lot of applique, but I do a lot of buttonholes. So I'm going to push number 7 there, and that's the one that I want to change. So I look at my stitch chart here, and I see that, oh, buttonholes, that's 0, 2, 3. 0, 2, 3. In order to confirm that, I need to push M for OK, and then again M. Now, so here's stitch number 1, but stitch number 7 is now buttonholes instead of applique. So I also do more blind hem than I do squigglies, but you know, that's the same, you switch it the same way. So let's talk about the settings over here. Settings, this is machine type settings. Now here, up here, you can change your screen to get it brighter or darker. It's more like about the contrast. This seems to be about right for me, number 14, and I just go okay for that. To get to the various settings here, you actually have 2 pages of settings. 3 pages of settings, okay. There we go. This changes the page that you're on, the stitch width dial. The stitch length dial just steps through setting by setting. And the way that I remember that is zigzag jumps. So jumping to the next page, you use the knob that shows the zigzag. If you're just stepping along, like a stitch just steps along, you use the stitch length knob. Okay, so going down here, I'm going to, and you see this little arrow right there? Just go to the arrow right here, and you're going to get right into that setting. This is on a sort of a quieter setting. I can also make it a little bit louder, and it gives you the example of louder. It's actually a little bit higher and a little bit lower too. And then over here it's off. You're not going to get any beep that way. So I'm going to push OK that way. Now I'm going to go down to here. This is the automatic thread cutter. So I have mine on right now. So I'm going to show you what that's like. So I'm going to leave that on. Okay, there we go. And let's say I do, see this little, this is your locking stitch right up there. So let's say I do a locking stitch at the end. I'm sewing along and I want to do a locking stitch at the end. Okay, here we go. So I push this one time, don't have to hold on to it, keep my foot down on the pedal until it's done making a locking stitch. And with that setting, it also cuts the thread. Now you know that it is in that setting because right up here you see a little picture of scissors. So if I went into settings and turned that off, that little scissors would not appear. So go over to the arrow, use the arrows to move to the one you want. Make sure you confirm that by pushing OK, and you see now the scissors has disappeared. There are stitches like your buttonhole stitch that has an automatic locking stitch at the end. So if you had those little scissors on, it would cut your thread at the end of doing the buttonhole. It's a nice time-saving feature. Okay, let's go back into settings again. Go down here to needle down, needle up. Now, this is set so that it will roll to a stop with a needle down. I'll give you an example of that. Oops, okay, got to get out of that. There we go. So you see, it rolls to a stop with a needle down. Now, I could go needle up, take my fabric out of there if I wanted to, or if I stopped with needle down and did my thread cutter, it lifts up the needle that way. Okay, let's go back into settings. So that's what that one's for. So I'm going to just page ahead to the next page. This is your startup speed. The machine at 1 when you use the start-stop button is going to slowly, gradually get up to full speed. If you were over here to 2, it would go a little faster, and then 3, it would just like a racehorse out of the stall. You know, I like to have my start-stop button a little bit more control, because if I want to stop it quickly, I'm going to have to push that button again. Whereas if I'm using my foot control, then I just lift my foot up off the foot control. So on that one, let's go down here to this one here. I have it at the 2, which is gives me plenty of control, but it also doesn't make me wait too much. Okay, so now we're going to go down to favorite stitch. So you can have this off or on. I really don't think there's any reason to have it off other than maybe hitting the wrong combination of buttons, but for me, I don't really have that problem, so I just leave it on all the time. Favorite stitch makes it so that you can take a stitch and make it your own. Let's say we want to go to 8 here. Now, if there's brackets around the stitch width and length, that means that's the default. Let's say I want to make that shorter and wider. See, the brackets have disappeared. If I wanted to save that as a favorite stitch, I go into settings. Let's see, do I already have that on? Can't remember now. Yeah, there it is. Okay, it says favorite stitch. That's, if I had this off in settings, that would not appear. That would not be on there. But right now, I can go to Memorize, and I want to put it in as memory, so I push 1. The screen tells you what you need to do. Now, that's favorite stitch, so I can switch it into any other stitch, go right back into stitch number 8. FS stands for favorite stitch. But what if I wanted to get back to defaults on that? Go back into favorite stitch, and M is how I get into favorite stitch. And I want to go back to default. It says push number 2. There we go. Restore defaults. Janome is famous for giving you little warning things. Are you sure you wanted to do that? So that's really a convenient thing. Just push that button, say, yes, I do want to do that. That long beep that you heard, that's it setting itself back to default. Okay, so get back into there. There we go. And I had to actually get out of that stitch and back into it to set it, to get it back into default. It doesn't matter. I mean, if you just choose that stitch again, that would do it. Okay, so let's get back into settings again. Page ahead, that's favorite stitch it's on. Now this one here is really genius. This machine will remember the last stitch you stitched before you turned it off. So if I have this on, now if I go to do, say, 1/4-inch piecing, and I happen to have it at favorite stitch, but that's fine. 1/4-inch piecing. Let's say I had a huge quilt with a lot of little patches in it that needed to be over several days. And it's 10 o'clock at night, it's time to turn off the machine. Well, I come back the next day, I don't want to have to search for this particular stitch. I want to go right to it. So what would happen is, so I'm going to just go ahead and stitch a little bit here, show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I turn off my machine. Let's see, right up here. And I turn it back on. Next day, it says resume last pattern. It's asking me, do I want to resume that last pattern? The last one I did, I said, okay. There it goes. It goes right back into the stitch that I stopped stitching on before I turned off my machine last night. So it just gives you that extra, do you want to do this again? And yes, you do have to confirm that. For me, unless I'm doing something where I do a lot of repetitive type things that it's going to take many days to go through. Usually I don't have that on, but it's a really nice, convenient thing to have. If you have like 20 dozen buttonholes you're doing, you want to get right back into buttonhole every single time. So I'm going to page ahead and turn that one off. And to get into that setting, you always have to push the right-hand arrow. That's fine. I'm going to turn it off, and that's OK. Always push your OK button. Now I'm going to go down here to this one here. This one is bobbin winding speed. Now I'm kind of a middle of the road type of person. I like to have it. You noticed when we did the threading video, it wound the bobbin nice and fast. So I think 3 is just fine. But you may decide that you want to wind bobbins really fast, or you have a specialty thread that you don't want to have it heating up as it's going through the guides. Maybe 1 or 2 might be better. So I'm going to keep it at 3. Now we're going to go down here. I speak English, so I'm going to keep it right here at English, but you've got a lot of different languages that you can choose. Turkish, how about that? And even, I think that's Chinese there. So I'm going to keep it at English. And then down here, you can put all the settings to default if you want. And I'm not going to do that right now because I got my settings just the way I want. So to get out of that, push your OK, and there you go. Okay, so that's the basic settings on this machine. As you can see, it has a lot of versatility to it, and you can always put it back to defaults, factory defaults if you want to. Very easy to do, either for the individual setting or for all the settings. You can do that. So if you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up. And if you have questions or comments, you can leave them in the area down below. We have other videos on this machine and on other machines that we have here at Montevilla Sewing Center. So stay tuned. We'll see you later. Bye.